Hello and welcome to Restless Gecko Reviews. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit like a Valorant E-Data at the moment. I've got a chest infection, so any likes and subs will go towards preventing me from bothering anime characters in Valorant games. So yeah, if you do that, you'll be saving a bunny's life. Thank you very much if you do. So today I'm going to be looking at the Hayate Otsu soft in wine red, which I have here, and the Zero soft in dye orange. Both what we've come to expect from Artisan, wonderful mouse pads, both with different strengths, different weaknesses. I would describe both of them as being very, very high quality. The stitching is amazing. Literally never gets in the way. It's not scratchy. No issues with my arm whatsoever. The surfaces have different qualities that you may or may not like. You may be bothered by. But just to go through their profiles. So the Hayate Otsu is a faster pad than the Zero. There's not so much dynamic or static friction. Slightly less on each. I find it suitable for tac shooters for Valorant and CS. There's enough stopping power for me. Obviously, at the moment I'm on the Ninjutso Sora V2, so it weighs absolutely nothing. It's a ridiculous mouse. But yeah, so everything sort of feels semi like a glass pad at this point with this mouse, just because it's so soft. It's so light, sorry. But yeah, there's a lot less friction, a lot less static and dynamic friction. The X-axis is a little bit quicker than the Y-axis, which makes it good for CS and Valorant. Well, more so CS than Valorant. You have a lot less vertical movement in those sorts of games. Valorant, not so much. If you're trying to shoot a raise out the air, you do need a little bit more vertical movement. But it's just great for when you're perfecting your crosshair placement and you want to minimize the amount of error. If you've got a little bit more restriction from moving up and down, it just helps you keep that sort of more consistent horizontal movement. So yeah, it's a great pad for that if you want something a little bit quicker. Again, I would describe both of these pads as balance pads, just with varying speeds, but absolutely suitable for Valorant, as shown by quite a few pros that use the Hayate Otsu. It's just a nice pad. The wine red colour is gorgeous. I don't know if you can see on the camera the stitching. So it's a semi-rough surface, not as rough as the Hien by any means. The Hien is just like disgustingly rough, but you can see the textures there. It's kind of got this sort of arrow pattern where it's like a zigzag that goes all the way up the pad, and I'm guessing that's what creates the different Y and X axis. But yeah, it's a great pad, absolutely great pad. Very thin. This is the soft, so not so much sponginess. I do have the Zero underneath, so that's probably why it's a little bit spongier than usual. But yeah, it's if you need to dig in, there's a little bit of room to dig in, but not so much as the XSoft. My Hien is an XSoft, so it was quite good. It's balancing that speed with that control. So I find the XSoft quite good on the Hien, just because it is so quick. The surface has been really good on my skin as well, so I have no complaints there. Miles better than the Hien. And then moving on to the Zero. So I'm actually maining the Zero at the moment. I find that it gives me a greater amount of control. It's not a mud pad by any means. It's not a QCK heavy. It is a slower pad. It is much more controlled experience. The surface is a lot smoother. The color is absolutely amazing. It's very similar to the FNATIC Focus XL Max, I think it's called. But it's not as spongy. The soft version, I think that's more like an XSoft to me personally. I would say slightly quicker as well. That seems to get a little bit boggy at times, although a decent mouse pad all the same. Completely humidity resistant. Both my mouse pads are humidity resistant. And as with all Zeros, this catches hair like nobody's business. If you want to remove hair from a Zero, buy another Zero and just rub them together, and eventually one of the Zeros will gather the rest of the hair. It does collect like hair and dust and things like that because it is such a smooth surface. The Y and X axis are very, very similar. Again, I think the X is slightly quicker than the Y, but that it might just be me and my movements. But yeah, it's a great mouse pad. I use it for Valorant and CS. I find that it gives me much more precision and much more control over my micro movements, my micro adjustments. Yeah, it works really, really well for that. Again, the stitching is absolutely flawless. You've got the pour-on pad, the pour-on foam. You've got the very sticky pad at the bottom, which is just like, yeah, I've just destroyed my desk trying to shake the thing. It just moves the entire desk. So it's welded onto my desk now. Which if you need to make adjustments, or you're a bit of a freak about keeping everything in line like I am, it's pretty hard to adjust. So yeah, get it right first time, otherwise you'll be forever picking it up and putting it down. But yeah, it's a great experience. Very, very controlled. As far as balance pad goes, it's not a control pad, it is a balance pad. But yeah, it's just been really good for my static clicking scenarios. I found it really, really good. I've got back up to my 104k plus on 6-shot, which I'm quite happy with. I fell off for a little while because I wasn't playing. But yeah, it's a great experience, and I would massively recommend it for tactical shooters. Again, the Hayate Otsu is just as good for tactical shooters. If you want something a little bit faster. Again, if you want to go faster than the Hayate Otsu, you can go up to the Hien. The Hien is a degree quicker as well, with a more consistent X and Y. The only issue is it's very, very rough, and your arm will start to, like, it is quite abrasive to the arm. So yeah, it will start to shear you down a little bit, and you do tend to find that, especially on the black, you get like smears of skin cells, which is not particularly pleasant. But yeah, you get that with most mouse pads these days anyway. But yeah, it is just a little bit more abrasive. I do find the Hien's quite nice for larger mice, heavier mice as well, because it's an XSoft. I can just dig in a little bit more if I need that. If I go from a flick into a smaller micro correction, I can just dig in a little bit more. And the soft is the same to a certain degree, but obviously not as much as the XSoft. But yeah, great pads. The only other issue I have with the Zero is that when it gets particularly warm, even though it is humidity resistant, my arm isn't humidity resistant, so I do tend to find that the base of my palm, my arm, if I get a bit warm, obviously I live in the UK where it's humid quite a lot of the time, and if it's particularly hot at any point, I just become incredibly sticky, and I stick to the mouse pad like crazy. And that does bother me, and at that point I switch over to the Hayate Otsu because I don't have as much problem, because it's a semi-rough surface. I don't stick to it as much. But yeah, it's both great surfaces. You can't really go wrong. Both are suitable for tactical shooters. I find that on the Hayate Otsu my tracking is a little bit better, a little bit more consistent. Not saying that either of them are particularly grabby, but the Hayate Otsu is a little bit less grabby. My tracking on it is great. It does make a little bit more sound, especially if you have a hollow mouse such as the Ninjutso Sora V2. You do get that sort of more of a scraping sound, whereas on the Zero it's a fair bit quieter. But yeah, both wonderful pads, as we've come to expect. These pads have been reviewed to death and done to death, so I appreciate you if you have watched this video. It's nothing original, nothing new, but these are just my thoughts on the pads. Yeah, you can't go wrong. And if you do buy from Artisan, remember that if you purchase 2 pads, you'll get the same shipping as you would for 1, so oftentimes it can work out better to get 2 pads for the price of 1 set of shipping. The shipping is not cheap either. They use DHL. But yeah, it's relatively easy to order from their international site if you want to pick up a couple. I can massively recommend the Hayate Otsu and the Zero Soft. I do like the soft base slightly more than the XSoft on these, just because they're not as fast as the Hien. But yeah, honestly, you cannot go wrong with an Artisan. I'm looking to review the new Freefall House combination piece, which I would quite like to get my hands on. It's a little bit faster than the Freefall SV, which I absolutely fell in love with. It's a great control, more controlled than I would say than either of these, with the firmer SV base. But yeah, that's another great mouse pad, and I'd like to see what more they come out with, because I think they're an exciting company to look at their progress. But yeah, so if you like the video, please subscribe and like. Massively helps the channel. So yeah, so that's all for this one. I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.